Have you ever thought you were right on track until suddenly everything unraveled? What if the chaos wasn't random but a rescue? And what if what felt like rejection was actually divine redirection? Let's be honest, sometimes we pray for clarity, for open doors, for smooth, straight paths. We ask God to lead us, to bless our plans, to confirm our direction. But instead of open roads, we run into walls. Instead of ease, we encounter disruption. Suddenly, the job you thought was steady slips away. The relationship you invested your heart and years into shatters. That dream you built your hope on, it falls apart like sand in your hands. And in the thick of that chaos, the first thought that usually races through our mind is, God, where are you? But what if the disruption isn't a sign of His absence, but proof of His presence? Today, I want to tell you something that could change the way you see every closed door, every broken plan, and every detour. Divine disruptions are not accidents. They are heaven's interventions. You see, we serve a God who doesn't move according to our deadlines or comfort zones. His ways soar above ours. His thoughts dive deeper than we can comprehend. He sees the whole map while we're staring at a single turn. And sometimes, just sometimes, when it feels like everything is breaking apart, it's actually falling into place. That slammed door. It wasn't rejection, it was protection. That lost opportunity, it wasn't punishment, it was preservation. God will allow your heart to break if it means saving your soul. He'll wreck your plans when your plans are about to wreck you. I remember the story of a man whose life was full of ambition. He had dreams, goals, even a carefully crafted timeline. He thought he knew where life was heading, but one by one things unraveled. Job rejections, failed relationships, unexpected detours. At the time, it felt like abandonment, like God had gone silent. But years later, that same man looked back and said something powerful. If everything had gone my way, I would have missed everything God had in store for me. That's the voice of someone who didn't understand the delays at first, but later could trace divine fingerprints all over every interruption. Because disruption is often the language of divine redirection. God sees what we don't. He knows what's coming before we even feel the wind change. He sees betrayal before it wears a smile. He sees danger hiding beneath what looks like success. So when He shifts your path, don't resist. When He removes something or someone, don't chase it. Because what you're calling loss, heaven is calling mercy. Some of you have been stuck in the question, why did that happen to me? But maybe the better question is, what did that protect me from? There are car crashes you never saw, storms you never had to sail through, and heartbreaks you were spared because God stepped in and disrupted your direction. So if you're in a season of broken plans and closed doors, take a deep breath. And honestly, let me speak from the heart. I would rather be uncomfortable in God's will than perfectly comfortable outside of it. Because comfort without purpose is just a slow drift away from destiny. I would rather lose what I thought I wanted than miss what I truly needed. You see, the safest place on earth is not a zip code or a career or a relationship. It's alignment. Alignment with the will of God. That's where peace lives. That's where clarity flows. That's where purpose ignites. If you trace through Scripture, a pattern starts to emerge again and again. People thought their lives were falling apart. But in reality, they were being set apart. Look at Joseph, thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and locked in prison. To the outside world, it looked like disaster after disaster. But heaven wasn't panicked. Every disruption was a divine setup, inching Joseph closer to a position of purpose, exactly where he needed to be at the exact moment a nation would need him. Then there's David, anointed to be king while still a shepherd. But before the crown came years of chaos. Running from Saul, hiding in caves, living like a fugitive. Disrupted, yes. Delayed, absolutely, but not destroyed. And never denied. Because God's timing doesn't cancel His promise, it prepares you for it. And what about Jesus? The cross looked like a catastrophe. To His followers, it was the end of the story. But we now know it was the greatest divine disruption in all of history. One that split time in two and changed the world forever. So what about you? What is God disrupting in your life right now? What's unraveling that you're desperately trying to stitch back together? Could it be that it's time to stop asking Him to fix it and start asking Him to direct it? Maybe it's time to surrender what you think you want and open your hands to receive what God knows you need. Because when God disrupts, He doesn't just break. He builds. He doesn't just remove, He replaces. He doesn't just end things, He launches better ones. If you're standing in the middle of confusion right now, if you feel like your life has gone off script, if you're walking through a storm without a clear sky in sight, hear this. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are being led even if you can't see the map. God doesn't need your full understanding to fulfill His perfect plan. He just needs your trust. He just needs your surrender. He just needs your yes. So don't fear the disruption. Don't fight the closed doors. Don't keep crying over what left your life. Lift up your eyes. Something greater is coming. What looks like a breakdown might actually be the beginning of your breakthrough. Because there's something sacred about peace, not the kind the world offers. When the bills are paid, the job is steady and the skies are clear. That's comfort, not peace. I'm talking about real peace. Peace that defies logic. Peace that shows up in the storm and whispers, "You're going to be all right." Peace that doesn't wait for the situation to change, because it changes you in the situation. And when God is the one directing your life, there will be moments when everything around you feels like it's spinning out of control. But don't worry, He's still holding the center. Let's explore how that peace becomes your anchor, even in the wildest storm. But here's the beautiful mystery: deep within your soul, beneath all the questions and chaos, there's a stillness. Not because you've figured everything out, not because all your prayers have been answered, or your problems magically disappeared. No, that stillness exists because you've learned to trust the one who holds it all together. That's what peace really is. It's not the absence of trouble. It's not the removal of conflict. Peace is the presence of trust. It's that quiet, steady voice in your spirit whispering, "Be still, I've got you." You might be facing something right now that has your heart racing. You might be anxious, uncertain, or even afraid. Maybe you've been pleading with God, begging Him to take the situation away. But have you noticed? Sometimes He doesn't take the trouble away. Instead, He gives you peace inside of it. You're walking through the fire, but somehow you're not burning. You're surrounded by pressure, but you haven't broken. That's not willpower. That's not human strength. That's divine stability. That's peace that defies explanation. That's the kind of peace Scripture calls beyond understanding. I truly believe one of the greatest signs that God is leading you isn't how easy your life is. It's how anchored you feel even when life is anything but easy. You're no longer tossed back and forth by opinions, expectations, or sudden storms. You're not swayed by headlines or heartache. You're rooted, grounded, because your peace doesn't come from what's around you. It comes from who is within you. You start moving differently. You walk through chaos with calmness. You face uncertainty with quiet clarity. Even when the ground shakes, your soul doesn't quake. There's a stillness in your spirit that whispers, "God is in control." Let me tell you something important. Peace is power. And it's the kind of power the world can't understand and the enemy can't steal. People may misunderstand you. They might reject you, mislabel you, or even shut you out. But if the peace of God rests on your life, you become untouchable in a way that confuses the darkness. The enemy can't figure out why you're not panicking, why you're not collapsing, why you're still standing when everything around you says you should be falling. That's why the enemy works overtime to disturb your mind, because if he can disrupt your peace, he can slow down your purpose. But here's what God does differently. When he directs you, he doesn't always start by calming the storm around you. He calms the storm within you. He'll settle your soul while the waves are still crashing. He'll anchor your heart before the wind stops howling. And in that quiet confidence, you'll know he's with you. Not because life suddenly got easy, not because the pain disappeared, but because now you have endurance. Now you can cry without drowning. Now you can stand in the middle of chaos with a heart that refuses to spiral. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's what it means to know. If God brought me this far, he's not about to leave me now. Some of you have been searching for signs, waiting for miracles, neon arrows, perfect timing, and thunderous clarity. But maybe, just maybe, the clearest sign that God is guiding you is the peace you feel inside. The kind of peace that lets you rest before the outcome is certain. The kind of peace that lets you keep walking even when you don't know where the road will lead. The kind of peace that lets you breathe even when the world's spinning. Because peace isn't passive, it's powerful. And it's proof that even in the waiting, you are not walking alone. That kind of peace we talked about, the one that anchors your heart in the chaos. It's more than just a feeling, it's a force. And sometimes it's the only reason you're still standing. You know that peace, don't you? The kind that showed up when everything around you screamed, "Give up!" But instead you kept going. You showed up when it didn't make sense. You loved even when it hurt. You prayed when it felt pointless. You forgave even when it was unfair. That kind of peace didn't come from your willpower. It wasn't born from sheer strength or strategy. It came from the one who has held your life in his hands long before you ever saw the battle coming. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is rest. Not a lazy rest, not an escapist checkout from life kind of rest, but a sacred rest, a rest that declares God is still working even when I can't see it. Rest in the truth that your steps are being ordered. Rest in the promise that the God who started something good in you will finish it. Rest in the quiet confidence that heaven is active even when earth feels silent. I don't know what kind of storm you're walking through today. But I know this: if God is the one leading your life, peace will find you. Right there in the waiting room of uncertainty. Right there in the courtroom of injustice. Right there in the quiet bedroom where your tears stain the pillow and hope feels distant. It won't come like lightning. It won't announce itself. Peace will whisper. It will breathe life into your tired soul. It will steady your shaking hands. And it will remind you you're not alone. You're not forgotten. You're being carried. And if you've got that kind of peace, then friend, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. But here's something else I've learned. Peace is powerful, but it often walks side by side with purpose. Have you ever felt something deep in your spirit that you just couldn't shake? A stirring, a weight, a holy burden that lingers no matter how busy you stay or how much you try to distract yourself. That's not anxiety. That's not fear. That's not stress. That's purpose. Knocking. That's often how God speaks, not through the thunder or the spotlight, but through the quiet, persistent pull you can't ignore. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it won't let you go. When God is writing your story, He sometimes places a divine burden on your heart that becomes too heavy to carry in silence. It's the thing you wake up thinking about, the dream that visits you at night, the ache you feel when you see brokenness in the world, and something inside you rises up and says, I have to do something. That's not random. That's not your imagination running wild. That's calling. God doesn't always show up in burning bushes or booming voices. Sometimes He simply places a divine weight on your soul. And that weight, it's not there to break you. It's there to guide you. It's the quiet nudge that keeps returning. The need only you seem to feel so deeply. The injustice only you can't look away from. That isn't a distraction. That isn't a nuisance. That's direction. It's the whisper of heaven pointing you toward your purpose. When God places a burden on your heart, it's not to crush you, it's to awaken something within you. It's not about making life harder. It's about making your eyes sharper. He's helping you see what others might walk past. He's inviting you into His divine work on this earth, not as a spectator, but as a vital part of the story He's writing. And believe me, some of the most profound callings begin not with clarity, but with heaviness. Some of the most life-defining missions are born from moments that leave us weeping. Think about it for a moment. Moses didn't step into leadership because he wanted the spotlight. He didn't raise his hand and say, "Pick me." No, he was moved to action because the pain of his people broke his heart. He couldn't look away. And Nehemiah, he wasn't a professional builder, not by training. He was a cupbearer, yet when he heard that the walls of his beloved city lay in ruins, something stirred deep inside him. His spirit ached. That burden gripped him so fiercely he couldn't shake it. So what did he do? He prayed, he fasted, he stepped up, and he rebuilt. You see, that restlessness he felt wasn't random, it was holy. It was God's way of saying, "You were made for this." The burden didn't go away because it wasn't supposed to. It was an invitation. And maybe that's what God is doing with you. Maybe the weight you're carrying isn't meant to hold you down. It's meant to push you forward. Maybe the reason you can't seem to find peace is because peace doesn't come before the calling. It comes through it. That uneasy stirring in your chest. It's not punishment. It's preparation. It's God refusing to let you settle for a life smaller than what He created you for. He won't let you stay in the comfort zone when there's a mountain calling your name. That's how you know He's guiding you not through ease, but through conviction. Not through silence, but through that voice you keep trying to quiet, the one that keeps asking, "What if I said yes?" And here's the thing, some of you have been pushing that feeling away. You keep saying, "It's not the right time," or "Someone else is better for this." You tell yourself, "I'm not ready. I'm not enough." But let me remind you of something powerful. God never burdens a heart without also empowering the hands. If He placed it in your spirit, He's already prepared the way. He equips the ones He calls not with perfection, but with grace. So no, you don't need every answer lined up. You don't need a blueprint or a spotlight. What you need is a willing heart. A heart that says, "God, if this is truly from you, I won't run from it anymore. I'll trust you. I'll carry it. I'll move." Because somewhere out there, someone's healing is tied to your obedience. Someone's breakthrough is waiting on the other side of your yes. That burden wasn't meant to torment you, it was meant to lead you. We live in a world that trains us to avoid discomfort, to chase after the easiest path, to see any kind of weight as something negative. But in God's kingdom, the burden is the blessing. That holy discomfort, that ache in your chest, that's how you know you're alive in the Spirit. That's how you know you're not just drifting through life, but walking in divine purpose. And the deeper the burden, the greater the call. So if you feel it, if there's that persistent whisper in your soul, that sacred pull toward something more, something higher, don't ignore it. Don't bury it under busyness or fear. Bring it to God. Lay it before Him. Let Him shape it. Let Him teach you how to carry it with wisdom and strength. Because this burden isn't here to break you. It's here to build you, to shape you into the person He dreamed you to be from the very beginning. And just like that, here's where timing comes in. Because the moment you embrace the burden is the moment your faith begins to stretch or strengthen. Now, let's talk about that timing. Why does it feel like it takes so long? What is God really doing in the waiting? When God is guiding your steps, He doesn't always move at the speed you expect, or even the speed you want. He's not governed by deadlines or pressure. He's never rushing, but He's never late. That truth can be tough to embrace, especially when your heart feels ready, your hands are open, and your spirit is crying out, "Lord, I'm here. I'm willing." And yet, heaven stays quiet. That silence, that pause. It's not a rejection. It's the sacred space where faith is forged. Not in the arrival of the promise, but in the waiting for it. You see, we live in a world that runs on urgency. Push harder, move faster, hustle more. If it doesn't happen now, then maybe it was never meant to be. That's the noise of our culture, but God doesn't follow the world's tempo. He doesn't answer to seconds or pressure. He works in seasons, not stopwatches. He speaks in patterns, not panic. And when it's truly God who is writing your story, you begin to notice something. Delays don't mean denial. They're not detours. They're divine designs. He's not wasting your time. He's using it. Every moment of waiting is carefully woven into His plan. Because before He does something for you, He's doing something in you. Maybe while you're praying for that door to finally swing open, God is preparing your character to walk through it with strength and integrity. Maybe while you're asking for the promise to be fulfilled, He's forming the version of you who will be able to carry it without crumbling under the weight. Sometimes we think God is holding something back from us, but the truth is, He's holding us together. Waiting isn't a pause in your purpose. It's not weakness, and it's definitely not passive. No, waiting is warfare. It's that sacred tension between, I know what God said, and I still don't see it yet. That's the battleground of faith. And honestly, that's where many people give up. That's where the enemy whispers the loudest, "It's too late. You missed your moment. God forgot about you." But hear this and hold on to it. If God is truly directing your life, then delay is not defeat. It's part of the process. It's how He prepares you for what's ahead. Think about it. Some of the greatest miracles in the Bible didn't happen instantly. Abraham had to wait 25 long years for the birth of Isaac. Joseph endured 13 years of betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and prison before he ever stood in Pharaoh's palace. And David, he was anointed king as a young boy, but he didn't wear the crown for years. They all had the promise, but none of them skipped the process. So, if you're in a season of waiting, take heart. You're standing in the same holy pattern as those who came before you. The waiting isn't pointless. It's preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. And speaking of the process, what does it really look like to hold on to hope when nothing seems to move? What do you do in that space between the promise and the fulfillment? And that right there is what God is doing in your life right now. He's not just handing you a destination like a map with a red X. He's walking you through a journey where you are being shaped, refined, and strengthened with every step. Because, let's be honest, growth doesn't happen when we arrive. Growth happens on the way there. The waiting room. That's where your spiritual roots dig deep into the soil of trust. That's where you learn to pray, even when no one's watching. That's where obedience is tested, not when everything's changing, but when nothing is. That's where a faith that can stand storms is born. Not a fragile faith that needs constant signs and instant results, but a grounded, unshakable kind that knows God is good, even in the silence. Maybe you've been praying faithfully, asking, knocking, seeking, and now you're left wondering, why is it taking so long? But hear this, God's timing is never about punishment, it's protection. Sometimes He lovingly withholds what you desire, Because He's developing what you truly need. Because stepping into something too soon before you're ready can crush you under a weight you weren't built to carry yet. But when He does open that door right on time, you'll stand in it with strength, wisdom, and peace. Not because the road was easy, but because the journey made you stronger. Yes, I know. Waiting can be lonely. It can feel like wandering through fog with no compass. But even when you don't see it, God is working. Not just on your situation, but in you. Every day that feels wasted, He's weaving it into your story. Every prayer that felt unanswered, every door that closed, every unexpected detour, they're not disruptions. They're divine design. Threads in the greater tapestry you haven't seen the full picture of yet. Real faith isn't proven when everything lines up. It's proven when the timeline makes no sense at all, but you still believe. When nothing seems to be moving, but you trust He still is. That kind of faith. It moves mountains, not because you shouted louder or tried harder, but because you endured the silence. You stayed planted in the not yet. You didn't abandon the process just because it wasn't fast. Maybe that's you, right now, caught between the person you used to be and the future you believe God is calling you toward. That middle ground, it might feel awkward, uncertain, invisible, but it is holy ground. That's where God leans in and whispers the loudest if you quiet your heart to hear Him. That's where He stretches your trust, not in what you see, but in what He said. That's also where your perspective shifts, where you stop measuring success by speed and you begin to walk at the pace of grace, where every slow step becomes sacred, where peace no longer depends on clarity but on confidence in who's leading you. And if you're wondering, am I still on the right path? Look no further than your own heart. Are you still praying, still hoping, still believing, even though the answer hasn't come? Then, yes, you're right where you need to be, because God's direction isn't always loud, but it's always faithful. You haven't missed it. You're not late. You're not lost. You're being positioned, prepared, held. So don't rush the process. Don't despise the waiting. What looks like a setback might be the very stage God is setting for your breakthrough. And what feels like silence, that could be the sound of heaven, orchestrating a masterpiece behind the curtain. He sees you. He knows the ache in your waiting. And no, you are not forgotten. Now the question becomes, what do we do with that kind of faith? How do we live while we wait without losing our fire? So yes, the waiting may feel like a mystery, but often it's in the waiting that God begins to reveal. And when the time is right, not when you think you're ready, but when He knows you are, it won't be a slow build. It'll happen suddenly. And in that sudden shift, you'll begin to understand why it took so long, why so many prayers were met with silence, why certain doors stayed shut. Because when it's God's timing, you won't need to force it, manipulate it, or beg for it. You'll only need to remain faithful. But here's something we rarely expect. When God is truly directing your life, His work sometimes begins not by giving, but by removing. And that can be the hardest part to accept. People you thought would walk with you forever may begin to drift away. Opportunities you prayed for with tears in your eyes might suddenly slip through your fingers. Plans that once felt solid may begin to unravel piece by piece right in front of you. And in those moments, confusion can creep in. It might feel like rejection, like abandonment, like loss. But listen closely. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't scramble to cling to what God has already lifted His hand from. Because when God removes something, it's not rejection, it's redirection. You see, God sees what you cannot. He hears the conversations you don't. He knows the unseen weight of burdens you've been carrying quietly. He knows the future you're stepping into, and out of mercy, not anger, He starts peeling away the pieces that no longer belong. He takes things you'd never have let go of on your own. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because what's ahead is too sacred to be tangled in what was only meant to be temporary. Think about the moments in your past, the heartbreaks, the closed doors, the goodbyes that came without warning. At the time, it felt like the world was falling apart. But now, with a clearer heart and hindsight on your side, you can see it for what it was. It wasn't falling apart, it was falling into place. Like a skilled gardener, God prunes the vine not to harm it, but to help it flourish. He trims what's been outgrown, not because you failed, but because He's ready to expand you. Sometimes subtraction is the beginning of multiplication. But if you don't understand the why, you'll mislabel His protection as pain. We've all asked those questions. God, why did they leave? Why didn't you save that opportunity? Why are you allowing this to happen now? But what if the thing you're grieving is actually the thing God removed on purpose to make room for something greater? What if He saw the end from the beginning and knew that road led to heartbreak? What if He shut the door, not to punish you, but to preserve you? Because some of the things we think we need are actually what's holding us back. Some of the people we thought were loyal were quietly slowing our growth. Some of the dreams we chased were far too small for the destiny God is preparing. So yes, He steps in. Not always with comfort, but always with purpose. And when He does, it can feel like loss. But look again, it's really love. God knows how to protect your calling even when you don't recognize the danger. He knows how to set you apart when the atmosphere around you is toxic. He knows when to slow you down even if you're eager to run. And yes, sometimes that means letting certain relationships fade. Certain platforms fall. Certain seasons come to an end. But that's not the end of your story. So what do you do when God starts removing pieces from your life? How do you trust Him while everything familiar starts to shift? You see, when God starts removing things from your life, it's never random. Just like a master sculptor chisels away what doesn't belong in the marble, every removal is intentional. So don't chase after what God has already cut off. Don't dig up what He's already buried. When something is gone, there's a reason. And sometimes the biggest test of faith isn't about believing in His promises. It's about trusting His pruning. Let's be honest, pruning hurts. Lord, I don't understand this. Why now? But faith says, I don't need to understand to trust you. Faith says, if you're taking it away, you must have something better. That kind of trust, it's not surface level. It takes maturity to release your grip when God removes something you thought you'd always have. It takes humility to admit that His plan is wiser, deeper, and more eternal than anything you could have dreamed up. And it takes deep, often quiet faith to believe that even in the ache of loss, God is still leading. But here's the truth. He keeps whispering, God will never remove something from your life unless it has already fulfilled its purpose. Or unless it was never supposed to be part of your purpose in the first place. We just don't always see it that way at first. Because, let's face it, we don't always know how tightly we're clinging to something until God begins to take it away. We anchor our worth in titles, in jobs, in relationships, in applause. We tie our identity to the things we do, the people who approve of us, or the roles we play. And when those things fall away, we're left with the core, the only thing that truly lasts, our dependence on Him. And maybe, just maybe, the very thing you're calling broken right now, the mess you're trying to fix, is actually the start of your breakthrough. Maybe God is doing something sacred in the silence. Maybe He's not punishing you, He's positioning you. So if you find yourself in a season where it feels like everything's being stripped away, don't panic. Don't reach to patch holes God Himself is trying to tear open. Instead, lean in. Ask Him the real question, Lord, what are you making room for in my life? Because often, before He leads you forward, He clears the path. Before He fills your hands with something new, He gently empties them of what no longer fits the future. And yes, right now it might feel like confusion. It might even feel like loss. But one day, you'll look back and realize you needed that removal. And you'll thank Him, not just for what He gave you, but for what He took away. Because if He hadn't, you wouldn't have been free enough to step into the fullness of what He had prepared all along. What God removes, He always replaces with something greater, richer, deeper. Something that fits not just your present, but your purpose. So now the question becomes, will you release what's gone to receive what's coming? And when it's His hand that's doing the removing, when it's God who's shifting the pieces and closing the doors, you can rest in one simple, powerful truth. It's always for your good. You see, when God is truly the one directing your life, He won't always send a neon sign or a dramatic miracle. Often, the most undeniable confirmation of His presence is something deeper, something quieter, a peace. But not just any peace. This isn't the fleeting kind the world offers, the type that depends on good news, perfect timing, or the absence of problems. No, this is the kind of peace that holds you steady in the middle of the storm. It doesn't make sense to the natural mind. It doesn't check every box or calm every fear. But it roots itself so deeply in your soul that even when everything around you is falling apart, you're not. That kind of peace doesn't come from understanding every detail. It comes from trusting the one who does. And there will be moments, trust me, where people look at you and wonder, how are you still standing? How are you so calm, so steady, so grounded in the face of chaos? And honestly, you won't even know how to explain it. Because it's not that the situation isn't serious, it's not that you're numb to the weight of it. And it's definitely not because you figured everything out. It's just that something inside you knows you're not walking alone. You're not wandering aimlessly. You're being guided step by a hand far stronger, far wiser, and far more loving than your own. That is peace. That's how you know you're not just guessing your way through life, you're being led. You could be facing uncertainty, standing at a crossroads that affects your future, your faith, your family. On paper, it may look like everything's spinning out of control, like you should be overwhelmed. But in your spirit, there's calm. Not because of you, but because of Him. That peace, that's God's fingerprint on your path. And sometimes that's how He speaks. Not in thunder, not in fireworks, but in a quiet, steady confidence that whispers, "This is the way. Walk in it." So when you feel that kind of peace, don't dismiss it. Don't second-guess it just because your circumstances don't reflect it. That peace is evidence, proof that He is with you, proof that His guidance is near, because sometimes God won't give you the full picture. He won't hand you the whole map. He'll just give you peace for the next step, and then the next, and then the next. And that peace becomes your compass, your confirmation. It's how you know you're aligned with His will. But here's something important. Peace doesn't always mean ease. Sometimes the very path God calls you to will be the one that costs you most. It might mean walking away from comfort, letting go of control, surrendering relationships or dreams that don't fit your calling. But even then, especially then, if God is the one who called you to it, He will cover you with a peace that no one can steal. And something inside you will just know. This may not be the easiest way, but it's the right way. How do you keep walking that path when it gets hard, when it gets lonely, and when obedience costs you something? And that right there, that calm confidence, is what will carry you through every storm. Previously, we touched on how true peace comes when your life is guided by God. Now, let's go deeper. Peace doesn't mean the absence of trouble. Real peace is the presence of assurance in the midst of it. It's not about escaping pressure, but finding purpose inside it. You might still cry, you might still wrestle, but somewhere within you there's a calm, an anchored stillness that refuses to let you give up. And that's how you know it's not your own strength keeping you going, it's His. Have you ever walked away from a conversation, a decision, or an opportunity that looked great on the outside but felt off inside? Like something wasn't sitting right. That's God's leading too. Because while peace is often a sign of alignment, discomfort can be a sign of misalignment. When God is steering your life, He doesn't just open doors with peace, He closes doors with unrest. Don't ignore that inner hesitation. Don't bulldoze past the subtle check in your spirit. Sometimes God blocks what we're begging for, not to punish us, but to protect us. When you're in tune with the Spirit of God, peace becomes a guardian. It guards your mind when fear tries to flood in. It guards your heart when disappointment tries to harden it. It guards your decisions when confusion clouds your vision. And that peace, oh, it's stronger than any strategy you could draft. It surpasses logic. It's beyond explanation. It's heaven whispering to your soul. You don't have to understand it all, just trust me. Think back, have you ever followed a sense of peace that made no sense at the time, only to later realize it was the right choice all along? That's the reward of trusting God's lead. Maybe today, you're standing at a crossroads. There are opinions, flying voices pulling you every which way, and the pressure is real. But deep inside, there's a still, gentle voice saying, wait, go, let it go. That voice, cloaked in peace, is the one you follow. You don't need all the answers to move forward. You just need to follow peace. Because peace is not passive. It's powerful. It speaks when your thoughts are loud. It anchors you when life feels chaotic. And when God is leading, peace becomes your proof. It confirms what your heart has quietly known all along. He's with you. He's ahead of you. And He will never let you miss what He has planned for you. So next time you face a choice, don't just ask, does this make sense? Ask instead, do I feel peace about this? Because when you follow the peace of God, you are following the path of God. And wherever His peace leads, His purpose is waiting.